In today's lesson, we're going to learn one more thing about triangle congruence, specifically what to do when we already have triangles congruent. What we're learning today is called corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, or CPCTC for short. What it means is, if two triangles are congruent, then their corresponding or matching parts are also congruent. Abbreviated CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Here we have two triangles. We have an angle congruent to an angle with the A and X. We have a side AC congruent to a side XZ. And we have an angle C congruent to angle C. We can now say that these two triangles are congruent because of angle, side, angle. So we know they're congruent, but what that also allows us to say now is that angle B has to be congruent to angle Y because of CPCTC. We could also say that AB is congruent to XY because of the same reason. And lastly, CB is going to be congruent to YZ because of CPCTC, which is corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Where we use this is when we do a proof. Here's a proof that we've done before, or at least part of it. We are given that angle V is congruent to angle S. We are also given that side TV is congruent to side QS. Both of those pieces were given to us. Now if we look at the picture, we can see that angle 1 and angle 2 must be congruent to each other. The reason is they are vertical angles, so we have the definition of vertical angles. If we mark the picture, we now have angle V congruent to angle S, side TV congruent to side QS, and we just put that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now we can say that triangle VTR is congruent to triangle QSR. The reason is angle, angle, side. Now we're left with trying to figure out why is VR, the side right here, congruent to the side SR. Well, what I've done so far is I've proven that this triangle that I'm tracing in blue is congruent to this triangle that I'm tracing in blue. So these two triangles are congruent. Since they're congruent, we can then say that they're parts. VR is congruent to SR, and the reason is CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So once we have two triangles congruent to each other, we can say that their parts are congruent to each other. You will use that on today's lesson 4.5 worksheet B, the corresponding parts of congruent triangles. If you have any questions, make sure to bring them to class.